I want to talk about something that is called, skillful means. It's more of a Mahayana teaching. You hear more of it in Zen or Tibetan uh, uh, places, but it's also found in Theravada. And Theravada is the lineage of the elders, and it's kind of the teachings that come out of Thailand and Sri Lanka and Burma. They're kind of hang out with the Pali Canon, and then the later texts that Zen and Tibet and other China, Japan expanded. So I think I find it's really helpful to have this idea of what skillful means are, what it means in our lives. So I just want to talk about it a little bit. And it goes back to the idea of skillful means, goes back to when the Buddha was enlightened, and he was had just awakened, and he was not planning to teach. And the story goes that there was a god in the god realm who heard, kind of read the Buddha's mind that he wasn't going to teach, and he appeared to the Buddha and said, "Oh, please, you must teach." And the Buddha said, "People are not going to get this. This is really a difficult practice, and they're too enmeshed in greed and hatred and ignorance to." And then the Brahma said, "But there are some people with just a little dust in their eyes." You've probably heard that phrase, just a little dust in their eyes. And then the Buddha realized, and the Brahma said, "And they just need you to give them a nudge in the right direction." And the Buddha said, "Oh yeah, okay." So then he taught the next 45 years, and that's why we have what we have today, all the suttas and the teachings. And the other piece of that skillful means that just permeates the literature is this idea that the Buddha taught in the vernacular. A lot of the suttas, a lot of the discourses are for monastics, because he created this community of monks and nuns who would practice and teach and be supported by the community. But he also talked to kings, he talked to villagers, he talked to everybody. And he didn't just say, he didn't just have one canned talk that he gave, because some people would hear it, other people would not. He was able to connect with the people, whoever he was teaching, he was able to connect with them. And we know today that people learn things so differently. People are oral listeners, or they read things, or they write, or people learn differently. So this was really a way of being skillful in his teachings. So teaching to people, and if people were more advanced, he'd offer deeper teachings. If they were newbies, he'd offer, really kind of the basic stuff. And it's interesting though, if you've been practicing for a while, we like to joke that there's only one Dharma talk, because really the Buddha just talked about how to end suffering and move towards liberation. But if you're new to practice and you learn the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, they don't change. You could be still studying those 30 years on. But what's happening is our understanding of them really deepens. And so the teachings become different for us, or we understand to a different level. So we hear things differently. So really, it's the teachers are skillful in talking to those specific areas. And the Buddha did that. So that was really skillful in how he showed up. And another thing about what the Buddha talked about, and I find this really helpful, is that when something may, and this is comes from what's called the Snake Sutta, and it's a very famous story. He said, if you're walking and you come to a river and you need to cross the river and there's a raft there, you take the raft across the river. And then when you get to the other side, you leave the raft. You don't carry it with you as you climb the mountain, because you don't need it anymore. And he talked about things we do in practice. Some practice might be useful today, but maybe not tomorrow. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about like when you're new to meditation, your mind is going, My experience was, and I talk to so many people, they go, I can't meditate. My mind is like, la, la, la. And it's like, yeah, that's it, because we're not used to being present, where our minds are just doing what they do. They're bouncing here and there. So when you first come to practice, it can be difficult. So you have concentration practices. You count, 1 to 10 and then back down to 1, or you do in and out on the breath, in and out. So you bring a focus. But there comes a point in time where you have enough concentration, so you don't need to do that anymore. You can let that go because it served its purpose. It's like the raft that you got to the other side of the river and you go, I don't have to do this anymore. And I actually have spoken to people who've been practicing for years and they go, I'm really tired of just counting my breath. And I'm saying, well, you don't have to do it anymore, but no one explicitly says that. So you think, oh, this is the way I'm supposed to do it. And which brings me to the next piece of this idea of skillful means is finding your own way with it. When the Buddha was dying and his attendants were like, what are we going to do when you're dead? And he's like, I've been teaching for 45 years. You have all the information you need. Find your own way with it. Ehipassiko. I love that teaching because I get a lot of questions also. Am I allowed to? Can I do this? Is this right? What's the Buddhist way to do something? And really, ultimately, what these teachings are about and what this practice is finding a way towards liberation and away from suffering. So as you are looking at something, you say, is this taking me towards liberation or away from liberation? Is it taking me away from suffering or towards suffering? So there's a clarity, and there's not just a following the rules. This is where the invitation is for you to really reflect. This is wisdom, discernment. That's all part of the practice. But what's really important around this is that you have some type of an ethical foundation, a framework. So you're not just saying, oh, this is an easy way to do it. I'm going to go this way. But it's like, is this causing harm? Because that's a paramount teaching in Buddhism, not to intentionally take a life, not to cause harm, and to cultivate compassion. So if you're doing something that's not causing harm and it's supporting you in his compassion, of course, why not? It doesn't have to be explicitly taught. You can ehipassiko, find your way with it. Is it wise? Is it skillful? I've talked to people, one of the factors in the Eightfold Path is right livelihood. And the Buddha lists things like working with drugs and alcohol or butchering and various things he lists in the suttas about wise livelihood, which, he doesn't talk about anything about being a tech billionaire or anything, but what you want to do is be skillful in how you look at this. And I had somebody years ago tell me about, he didn't think his livelihood was a wise thing to do. He thought it caused some harm in some way. And I'm looking at it and I'm not seeing it, but he's on the inside and that's what he's feeling. And so it's like, okay, you find your way with that. But what's important is if you're doing something that is causing harm in some way, let's say the Buddha said, I think he has bartender in there, not technically bartender, but serving alcohol. And that's one of the precepts: don't drink or take drugs that lead to heedlessness. And so something around that. So if you're in that and it's like, well, I have to, and you're studying this, it's like, oh, that means I have to quit my job. That's not necessarily what it means. It means, is this a livelihood that's supportive of this practice? And if it's not, is it wise for you to quit your job right now? It may not be. So don't quit your job if it's going to cause harm to you or your family. But what we do, this is a long game. Set an intention. Somewhere down the line, I hope to move into a different arena for my livelihood. This is not something that we do, and we all want the instantaneous gratification. I call it the microwave miracle, but it's not going to happen. In the teaching around the paramis, which are these 10 qualities that they talk about that are needed for enlightenment, patience, wisdom, equanimity, so on. It's a beautiful teaching, but the story goes that the Buddha lived multiple lifetimes, eons and eons worth of lifetimes, developing each of these qualities until he had developed all these qualities to their fullest. And then he took birth as Siddhartha Gautama, who became the enlightened Buddha. So what I take that to mean is it's going to take a while. So be patient. This is where wise intention comes in. So you have this grounding in intention. I may not be able to do this today, but I'm walking in a direction. My intention is to move towards this in my life. So that's skillful means. It's skillful for me to do this right now, but I'm walking in that direction. So I think it's really a way to support ourselves, because so many people want to get into well, what's the Buddhist way? What's this way? What am I supposed to do? And it's not that there's no commandments in Buddhism. It's a guidance for a path of liberation. It's guidance for a path of freedom from suffering. And Joseph Goldstein talks about skillful means, and he says, it's skillful means, what we're doing is skillful means for liberating the clinging mind from suffering. So if you're struggling over something, it's like, is this skillful? Don't suffer over something that you can't do anything about right now. That's meaningless. That serves no purpose. It's like having termites destroying your house. And then if you get it tented, you're killing all these beings, but I'm not supposed to kill beings. And so it's this, and people have struggled. They've struggled with rats in their attic. I mean, it's hard. You don't want to kill, but there's okay, I actually really can't let my house be destroyed by these termites. It's not wise. So I'm going to understand that this is skillful in this moment. There's a Zen story of a house that catches fire, and there's 3 children inside playing, and they're not coming out, and the father is outside, can't get to the children, and he's terrified that they're going to be killed. And so he starts yelling to them and promises each of them wonderful things that appeal to them. To each one, it's like, you, I'm going to give this, you, I'm going to give this, you, I'm going to give that. And the kids are like, yay. And so they all ran outside and they were safe, but he didn't have any of those things. So what he did is he lied to them. So you can look at wise speech, not telling the lie, but this is skillful. He could say, well, I can't tell a lie, so I don't know how to get my kids out. But he used skillful means. The intention was to save somebody from harm, and grounded in love, grounded in wisdom, grounded in compassion. So that is really important, because we could get into this slippery slope of, oh, well, I can just do that, or I can just do this, or I could do whatever. And it's like, no, it's grounded in love, it's grounded in compassion, it's grounded in wisdom, it's grounded in ethical behavior. This burning house story is just a one-off. You don't walk around living your life that way. Yeah, so I love this line. I saw some quotes from some teachers around this skillful means, and it's like, the ethical life isn't a matter of following rules, but of committing to a particular line of inquiry, of asking which choices exemplify the skillful, the right, and the good in each moment. And this is where it's so important to be present. It's about being right here, right now, and open to what's happening now. skillful, Annie Nugent's a teacher, and she said, the skillful means for working with these difficult states of mind, whatever our experiences are, vary from person to person and even day to day, depending on what is appropriate now. So we are present. We don't do something just because we've always done it. We have to bring our awareness. We have to bring our wisdom, our discernment, what is appropriate in this moment. Even if it looks a little different from what you're used to, this might be the skillful thing to do right now. And yeah, another quote just saying the same thing. Cultivating wisdom and discernment includes knowing the most useful action we can take in any moment. It requires that we understand what we can control and what we can't control, and to use our thoughts, our speech, and our behavior in the most beneficial way. That's how we move through the world skillfully. And it's really important. It's how we do this on a day-to-day basis. It's how we move through our lives, living, not, it's like they say, be a Buddha, not a Buddhist. Live the teachings. Like he said, I've taught for 45 years. Find your way with these teachings in the way that makes the most sense in this moment. There's another piece of this that I think is really important. And that's the idea of the relative and the absolute. I'm not, if you're familiar with those ideas, the relative is what's happening right now, and the absolute. So the absolute teaching is that there's, like everything is impermanent, and we are conditioned beings, and there is dukkha in this world. But there's also the relative experience of our life. There's what's happening right now. And one of the most clear examples for me of this was many years ago. I was director of a meditation center, and we were starting affinity groups. We were starting a LGBTQ affinity group, and this was even before we had the term BIPOC. We were starting a POC affinity group. And people in the community got really annoyed, which blew me away. And it's like, we're all one. How can we have these groups? Instead of recognizing that, yeah, in the big picture, we're all one, but we live in a world where it hasn't been safe for many people to be in larger communities and to create these groups where people can go and feel safe, these affinity groups. It's really skillful means. At some point, we might all recognize this interconnectedness and live in a way that it's safe for everybody, but not today. Especially today, and I'm looking at what's going on. How does what's happening affect us and affect our situation? So I have a lot of friends who are immigrants, and they are not going into the streets. They're not marching because it's not safe. I was talking to a trans friend the other day, and she was talking about how terrified she is to be in particular places. So what is, with my privilege, I can do, I can't expect other people to do. So we have to get out of judging mode and comparing mode, and recognizing that everyone is walking through their own path, and they have to take care of themselves skillfully. And we honor that. We absolutely honor that. That's really important. It's really a big part of this idea of skillful means. Because this is, when we get into that place of getting stuck in the absolute, that's when you have what's called spiritual bypass, which is that everything's impermanent, therefore I'm not sad that this ended, that kind of thing. And denial of grief, denial of sadness. I had some really awful news yesterday morning. I saw a friend of mine he's Italian, he lives in Italy, was in a terrible accident last week. And yesterday I got the note that they were going to pull the plug because there was nothing they could do for him anymore. And it's just, I did not grow up learning how to hold sadness or grief or sorrow. It was like, la, 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 what can I do to not feel? What can I do to not feel? But that's the absolute. It's like, oh, everything's impermanent. Oh, well, that's a denial of the reality of our experience. Maybe when we're enlightened, we can hold it a different way, but I'm not enlightened. I got my tattoo. I'm not dead. I'm not done. I'm going to feel that grief. I'm going to feel that sadness. I'm going to show my humanity. I'm going to welcome the human condition because we are all human in this world. That's what the Buddha said. That's what the noble truths are. There is suffering, there is birth, there is death, there is loss. The five remembrances, we are all of the nature to grow old, get sick, and die. Everything we have will be taken from us. We have only our actions. So we recognize the reality of that, but then we also recognize the reality of this moment and how we are greeting each day. That skillful means. That skillful means. So we take a pause instead of, and this is why we practice recognizing our reactivity. We practice recognizing our autopilot conditioning. And instead we sit. So that's why when we sit in meditation, we're something uncomfortable comes up. We're immediately trying to figure out a way to get rid of that. I'm going to make a plan. Ooh, I don't like that. I'm going to make a phone call. As soon as this damn bell rings, I'm going to la, 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 la. Whatever it is. Instead, can we come back to right here, right now? What is the most appropriate thing in this moment? I was on a retreat a few weeks ago, and this question popped into my head. And I don't have an answer for it, but I thought of it as a koan. And the question is, what if I just sat? And when that popped into my head, it didn't mean, oh, run back to the hall and meditate some more. I think I was walking. And it's like, what if I just sat? And so that's kind of just been hanging out. And I've been like, it's been popping into my head over the last few weeks. And it's like, when there's a lot of stuff going on, it's like, what if I just sat? And I don't mean like pulling out a cushion and sitting. And it's like, what if I just sat down for 5 minutes and say, Alexa, set an alarm for 5 minutes and just sit, not even try and go anywhere, but just sit and allow that wisdom that we have, that discernment to just be. What's most skillful right now? Sometimes there's an answer, sometimes there isn't an answer, but we just ask the question. For me, I guess it's a roundabout way of saying, what if I just pause and see what makes the most sense in this moment? I teach a couple of classes a week online, and I was talking about this last night, and somebody asked me, what was skillful in your life that you no longer find skillful? And somebody else answered the question also, and somebody else in the class, and she said, being nice, being kind instead of honest. I want to be kind when maybe that's not the most skillful thing. Maybe I need to say what needs to be said. And that is right and wise speech. We are kind in how we say things. We're gentle in our speech. We say it at the right time when it's appropriate, but we say what needs to be said. For me, when he asked the question, I was like, oh, sarcasm. I grew up in New York City, and apparently sarcasm is a way of life in the Northeast of the United States. And I was really good at it. I've shared this before. I was really good at it. I was very funny, And for me, it was a way of fitting in because I never felt like I fit in, but I was good at this and people laughed and I felt, oh, good. And that's how we communicate. And then I moved to California. Not so much a way of life. My New Yorker's laughing here. Not so much a way of life. And I remember over 20 years ago, I heard somebody saying they didn't want to be a wise ass anymore. And I went, oh, is that a thing? Can you not be a wise ass? Because it was starting to feel uncomfortable, but it was skillful at the time for me to do that. And then I had someone tell me I made them cry because of something witty I said, but it was hurtful. And I embraced the teaching. If I want to live in a way that doesn't cause harm to others, I'm going to have to let go of this because it's not skillful anymore. It's not serving a purpose anymore. And we're talking 20 years of letting go of that. It still pops out. I asked your forgiveness in advance if I'm a wise ass in a conversation, because it does happen, especially if I'm back in New York. But that is also another part of the Eightfold Path: intention, renunciation, letting go of what doesn't serve anymore. It may have served, it's like the raft. It may have served at one time, but it's not skillful anymore. So this is a whole package of how we move through the world, seeing things in the moment, what's most beneficial right now. Not the canned response because I've memorized it and it seems like the right thing to do because it's always been that way, but maybe it's different today. Maybe you find yourself doing things you've never done before because it's appropriate right now. That's what it is. What is most wise for us in this situation? You know, we have to be willing to pause. We have to be willing to look. We have to be willing to say, maybe I don't know. Sometimes that's the most skillful thing. So I invite you to reflect on your own experience and maybe ask yourself, what was skillful, what's not skillful anymore? Maybe what doesn't serve me. So I think it's a helpful reflection. You know, who is it? Was it Aristotle? Somebody said the unexamined life is not worth living. And that's what we're doing. We're examining our conditioning and seeing what doesn't serve, what has no grounding in reality. And instead, we're working towards being fully present to the reality. We're not just operating from habit energy. We're operating from the moment at hand. So thank you, my friends, for your always generous and kind attention. I'm so grateful. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And also would like to say that I have to repeat them, so be kind to me if you're asking a question. Any thoughts or comments? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, my friends, for being here. And I invite you to find your way with this. Because that's what it is. Just finding your way with these teachings. Let these teachings be a foundation for you as you move through each day. So I have a couple of announcements. We are supported by your generosity. So if you're in the room, there's a couple of baskets in the back. One is for ICD, and that helps to pay the rent and other expenses. The other is for the teacher that supports us as we do this stuff. And so your generosity is helpful. There's also, Dana is the word that we usually translate as generosity. There's also, and for y'all online, I'm gonna send a link so that you can donate online if you like. There's also the Dana of volunteering. And this group is specifically Sunday, we have a couple of volunteers each week who put out the basket. They don't have to set up the chairs or put them away, because my Zell, bless their hearts, do that. But if you want to sign up to be volunteer on some coming Sunday, I think there's a sign up sheet back there. Oh, yeah, thanks, Anita. Anita and Rich were our volunteers today. Thank you so much. And is there anybody who wants to go? They're just so excited they want to sign up? No, huh? Well, think about it. It's a way to give back and to help this go. We can really use your support. And there's other ways to volunteer too. There's ways like helping with emails and stuff like that. So if you want to become more connected to community, please, please, please talk to me or talk to Rule or Terrence, two of our board members who are here. That's, I think, it. I'm not sure who's here next week. Jokai's having a half day in June. I think it's the 21st, something like that, whatever that is. That date, I think that's the date, yeah. Did anything else, any other announcements? No? Okay. There are cookies in the back. Please, even if you don't want to eat it here, I invite you to take one with you or two. And you're having virtual spiritual donuts where you are. So spiritual donuts. Okay. Well, thank you so much, my friends. And I want to read the merit that Ian this beautiful offering of merit that Ian wrote. It's called Going Forth. Going forth into this world so in need of light, may I bring all the kindness and wisdom I embody to each being and each situation that I meet. May the power of my practice today strengthen my resolve to be an agent of peace and justice in this world. Going forth together into this world so in need of light, may we together bring all the kindness and wisdom we embody to each being and each situation that we meet. May the power of our practice today strengthen our resolve to be agents of peace and justice in this world. We dedicate our practice for the liberation of all beings, the great, the small, the wise, the ignorant, the powerful, and the powerless. May all beings be liberated from sorrow and loss, hatred and injustice, scarcity and want, and every form of suffering. May our practice today be a prayer for peace, and may it benefit all beings without exception. May all beings be free. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.